I promised I would tell you how I voted. I voted against the Windsor framework. And I voted against it because I didn't think it was the right way to change the Northern Ireland Protocol. I thought the Northern Ireland Protocol bill was. And the reason for that is that within the Windsor framework, we are dependent on laws being changed by the European Union, which could be changed back again. And that applies to the break as well, so that if the break were ever used by the Stormont Assembly, the EU could then say, because this would lead to divergence, they're closing the green lane. And the green lane is the way of trying to maintain at least a semblance of barrier-free trade between GB and Northern Ireland, and that's fundamental to being a single country. Now, Boris fully understood that the Northern Ireland Protocol was temporary. It says it in the protocol that we are meant to find technological methods that make trade work much more smoothly. And this was fundamental because Boris had worked out how to get the Northern Ireland Protocol to work, and that was by a mix of strength through the Northern Ireland Protocol bill and through trying to negotiate with the EU, which wasn't working. And the problem with what's been agreed is that it relies on the goodwill of the European Union, which they didn't show in the negotiations on the Northern Ireland Protocol. Otherwise, we'd never have got here in the first place. And it's this position of Boris, his success in leading Brexit, that has ultimately led to him being in front of the Privileges Committee today. This was never really about cake or curtains or indeed about Chris Pincher. It was fundamentally about Brexit and the reaction of the establishment to Boris as the figure of Brexit. If I am the Woolworths of Nigel Farage, Boris is the Fortnum Mason of Brexiteers. And his opponents seem to suffer from Boris spongiform encephalopathy, a newly discovered wasting disease of the brain which particularly affects metropolitan types, and now known to be prevalent in Islington. Because what happens, or what has happened to a number of people, perfectly sensible people who used to like Boris, even voted for him to be Mayor of London, is that they were so shocked that he turned out not to be on their side over Brexit that they lost their marbles. I think some of them even sent their marbles off to Greece, because they failed to understand that Boris was a true Brexiteer. If you read his articles going back over 30 years, you see how much he disparaged the European Union, how much he realised its failings, and that therefore it was only natural that he should be the person who led the referendum campaign in 2016, which was successful, which was tipped over the edge because of his leadership. And that angered people who saw him as a friendly liberal conservative, which in so many ways he is, but with a Brexit hard edge. And so they were determined to get rid of him, and still are. And that's why the Privileges Committee is behaving as it is, behaving in a way that seems to me to be partial and unfair. I sat in on a couple of hours of the committee earlier on this afternoon with a couple of divisions in between, and it was absolutely fascinating. I've never seen a politician go as red in the face as Harriet Harman did. She went as red as a herring when Boris reminded her of her far from impartial views of him, while she now says that they put their political opinions outside the door. It's not a very credible thing to say when you've already tweeted against the person who you are judging. And I think it's a pity that somebody previously so respected is undermining her own reputation by carrying on as chairman of a committee where she's reflected her own view previously. But the committee's questioning, the committee's report that it released previously, showed that they were looking to Boris to prove his innocence rather than the traditional approach to British justice where you are innocent until proved guilty, putting out the whole case against him before he had a chance to answer seemed to me to be the wrong way round. So why is Boris so annoying to these people? Well, as I said, it's because they thought he was one of them, and they were so shocked when he supported Brexit, they misunderstood him. Whereas you and I know that he's always been a true Eurosceptic, because we've actually listened to what he had to say. So that's what's led to Boris spongiform encephalopathy. We wait for the WHO to give us final details on how it's affecting people.